Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Andrew Eborn Show with special guest, Aline Waites. How are you, Aline?
I'm very well. In fact, I'm amazing.
I do love it. It's going to be good. Well, every time we chat, we're in virtually every conversation, we are punctuating it with the name of Robin Hunter. And I thought today we should maybe have a little bit more of a look at the life of Robin Hunter, who he was, who he is, and why he is so very, very important in your life. But let's start off. Remind us how you originally met.
Well, there are several versions of this, but actually the one that is the funniest one, oh my God, something's come on, was when I went out on a date with him, having been warned not to have anything to do with him because his father was a movie star and therefore he was going to be wicked, you know. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what we did or anything, but at the end of it, he said, my parents were away. They had a flat in Jermyn Street. Come and, no, let's go and have a drink at home. And I said, no, because I knew what he meant. And he said, oh, no. And I've put clean sheets on the bed. Now, it was the most endearing thing because he was telling the truth. And that is the big thing about Robin, that he always told the truth. As far as I know, I mean, I didn't suspect him.
But there's a brutal honesty about that, isn't there?
It's wonderful.
There's not
I mean,
come and see my actions or
anything
anything.
happened afterwards because obviously he intended to have an affair at the time, you know, and obviously he didn't want somebody who wouldn't go and sleep with him. So that was the end of that one. And then we used to meet quite a lot. I did a lot of comedy programs at when I was in the BBC Rep. I did a lot of comedy programs from the Paris cinema. And so did he. So we kept on bumping into each other and we always had fun and lots of good times, you know. But by this time I'd been married and he was married to Maria, I think. I don't really know. But I mean, you know, there's never any chance of anything happening because, you know, when everybody else did that sort of thing all the time. And so probably he did, but, you know, because I've told you about the girl at the Buxton who had to have a new man every night, you know. But that's how things were, you know.
Yes, no, I understand. Well, you mentioned about Robin's celebrity Hollywood father. Tell me a bit about him.
Well, Ian, he was just a nice guy. He was a very good actor. He was in the birthday party. No, not the birthday party. The one I did the set for Dundee. I did a set for it in Dundee, and I can't remember the name of the cocktail party. It was a cocktail party.
Yes, the cocktail party.
Because I remember doing the set. I used to paint, you see, in the old days. I do everything, you know. I'm terribly versatile.
Multitasking, I know, it's always...
I don't multitask, you know, because if you multitask, you don't do anything properly.
All interesting, but multi-talented then. Multi-talented is good. So his father then, Ian, what did you know about him when you first met Robin, having been warned to stay away?
What did I know about him? Well, I mean, the thing is that what nobody realizes that all those people in the 30s, and I think the 20s, have disappeared now, you know, and nobody knows about it. People don't even remember Jessie Matthews, you know, who was the biggest star, or Jack Buchanan, who is, you know, my favorite person, you know, in the 30s, dancing person. But Jack Buchanan was in something, wasn't he, in Hollywood? He did some Hollywood stuff quite late on with, I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, he did. So Robin's father was terribly well known to everybody. You know, he was Ian Hunter, and he was always played the British person, and quite often the villain, because British people were villainous always, you know, because he had a posh voice, you see. So he was always the villain. So he was just terribly well known, and he was a nice man, and his wife was called Cash. And they both finished up in Dales.Her. I've told you all about Dales.Her. He was chasing all the old ladies. So that was okay. I can't think of an awful lot to talk about him really, because I didn't really know him terribly well. But
did you meet him
he was,
many
the
times?
thing was, sorry.
Did you meet him many times?
No, I didn't meet him at all.
At all? Not at all? Okay.
No, because I mean, Robin and I weren't together while Ian was alive.
Right.
But we were very good friends, that was all. I mean, we were always terribly good friends. And then Robin was working at the Players, and I always refused to go there. Now, I can't remember when I started going to the Players. I know I did an audition for the woman who was auditioning at the time. And I just did a terrible, you know how sometimes you just can't do it. And I did a song and I sang it all wrong. And she said to me, "And can you dance as well?" She said. That was funny.
So what was the answer to that?
I can't remember her name, but she was very famous for being wicked, you know. And anyway, so that was my audition for the Players. But then I was asked later on to go and do things, but I stopped doing it then because I was getting bored with it. But Robin was always fantastic because he didn't do what he was expected always. You see, the chairman of the Players I think it was Leonard Sachs who started doing all this alliteration stuff, you know, and all this. For the very first time. So Robin used to do it as a sort of joke, you know, and as if it was not very important. And oh, come on, let's do it. Might as well get on with it. Come on, we'll do it. Things like that. So I liked what he did very much. And I would go and see him. And whenever I went to see him, we would always have a drink together afterwards. And, you know, he would, you know, make sure that he bought me a drink after the show. And because we were just terribly good friends and we just laughed at each other all the time.
And I think that's when people talk about soulmates and without being patronizing about it or dismissing it. It's rather like people are legends or people are brilliant or people are geniuses or whatever. But I think he probably was, if anybody in your life, probably you'd call him your soulmate, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was so nice because he was sort of the person that I spent my whole life looking for. Do you know what I mean? Because he was just right for me. I mean, you know, other people might not have liked him all that much. I mean, he got married to other people.
But he was married twice before, wasn't he?
He was married twice before. And I think he had the whole spotlight as well during his lifetime.
And did that worry you then when you had the relationship? You've been warned off because of his famous Hollywood father.
That was when I was 19, you know. That was a long time before. I mean, I didn't think about it later on. I mean, I just, you know, we just talked about being funny, you know.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. But you developed that sort of relationship. And you say he works at the Players. What about the rest of his career? Talk to me about that.
He was in something called, no, I can't remember. He started, his big moment, of course, was at the Coliseum. And he played Rocky in Damn Yankees. And he sang, "You Gotta Have Heart." That was his song, which he sang with Eddie, whatever his name is. You know what I'm like about names, don't you?
Yes, change the name to protect the innocent. I'm not so sure about the innocent in this case, but yes.
Anyway, so yes, that was his very big moment, I think, was the turning point of everything. And then he went into several musicals. He did a lot of musicals. And he did 4 flops one after another. And one was it's so funny. He was with Donald Sinden, who is a darling. Do you remember Donald Sinden?
Of course. What a wonderful voice.
Yes, gorgeous man and a darling, sweet, sweet man. And he couldn't sing. And the famous line was, and there used to be a people called the gallery first nighters, which you probably don't even know about, who used to go to shows in order to destroy them, you know. And they would sit in the gallery and they would boo and hiss and do all the things, you know. And Donald sang a song and then went off, you see, and Robin came on. And Robin's remark after that was, "I'm a bit worried about him." And the whole audience just roared with laughter because everybody was worried about it. And the wonderful thing about Donald, he just loved the story. And Robin wrote about it in Plays and Players, you know, this whole story about Donald not being able to sing. So that was very funny. So that was nice. He was also in Pleasure of His Company. He played the young man in Pleasure of His Company at the Haymarket. And Judith Stott, who was Webber Dee with Me, was the girl, which is the part I played afterwards. And Nigel Patrick, I've suddenly remembered his name.
There you go.
And Carol Brown. Anyway, but they were all famous people. And there was Robin was in it, and also a young Chinese man called Bert Kwok.
Fantastic Bert Kwok, absolutely.
Darling Bert, yeah, my best friend. And Robin's best friend. We were all best friends. And every night they had a wonderful set. And the tradition was in those days that when the curtain opened, the audience would applaud the set, you see. And Bert was on stage as the Japanese butler. Robin had a Japanese butler as a child as well, by the way.
Did he? Ah, okay.
Yeah. His parents had a Japanese butler.
Remember what it was called, the Japanese butler? Do you remember what his name or her name?
Oh, that was in Hollywood.
Right.
And when the war started, of course, he was deported. He went into a camp, you know. All the Japanese people were put into it.
Do you remember the Japanese butler's name? Did Robin ever tell you?
No, I don't remember his name.
Anyway, Bert played this character, yes.
There was Bert, and Bert was on stage, you see, at the beginning, doing cocktail shaking or something like that. And all this applause happened. And Bert said, they applauded me. I got a round of applause. Robin has in there. It wasn't you, darling. It was the set.
Oh no, that's awful. People always love good sets, don't they?
Yeah, yes. Well, I don't know whether they do now because I
don't know, but they do. Sometimes they're amazing creations, and every now and again we should, with every part of the theatre and every part of a production, applaud people separately. I know we did a big thing for the NHS recently, but recognizing the skill, when you yourself, you are multi-talented, recognizing those different elements that make up a production. Yeah. And I was talking to your great friend Donna King, for example, and she was telling me about Siegfried and Roy and all the different elements that made up their show, from the choreography to the music by Michael Jackson to the tigers and the lions and Siegfried and Roy's personality and the glorious chemistry there. All of those elements made up the production, didn't they? So I get it that audiences clapping a set is lovely.
Yes, well, but I mean, you know, everybody. I mean, Donna's husband was a great set designer, you know. Which you knew.
Yes.
It was so wonderful, you know, to hear you talking to her because you'd worked everything out and you'd learned everything by heart, which I always think is such a good asset. You know, it's your best thing, isn't it? When you're interviewing people, you do take a lot of time over finding out about them.
Well, it is interesting. What I also, I'm talking about finding out things. What I also was delighted to find out is that Robin Hunter, his birthday was 2 days after my mother's birthday. My mother's birthday was on the 2nd of September, 1929. And Robin,
that's right. Yes, I remember.
Robin was on the 4th of September, 1929.
Robin. And the 7th of September was Elsie.
Exactly. There you go. See, I remember these things. It's glorious.
I don't quite know how old Elsie. I think Elsie must have been about the same age as Robin.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe they're all talking to each other now.
Oh, I'm sure they are. They're all saying, listen to that actor, Aline, they're nattering on. So Bert was on stage. He had the set being applauded. Robin from the Coliseum, a fantastic production there. What else would people remember him for?
Who, Robin?
Yeah.
Oh, well, he did a TV series, which I can never remember the name of. And I've been trying to look it up, you know, but I can't find out. And he was a sea captain or something. And I don't remember it because I never used to watch television because I never had, you know, I didn't watch because I was doing shows all the time.
It is funny, those in the profession tend not to watch many things. It is extraordinary because people say, oh, did you watch this last night? Well, no, I was working myself. So
well, that's right. You don't get a chance to watch. I mean, nowadays, of course, you can go and, get the review. I don't even bother with that now. Very little. I watch David Mitchell, of course, because I absolutely adore David Mitchell. I wrote to Victoria the other day and said, I'm in love with your husband, but don't worry about it. Anyway, yes, Robin. Where was Robin? Yes, he did something, and he's done a lot of movies as well.
Which was he most proud of? When he sort of finished a movie, would you discuss it, or would he just leave that was just work and it's nice to cut that?
More or less that. Yes.
Yeah. It is interesting.
You do the job and you finish it, and then you go to the Buxton. And that's the end of everything. I mean, he did drink an awful lot, but then everybody drank an awful lot in those days. I mean, I was talking about this to you when I was listening to you, when you were trying to get hold of me. I was actually listening to you.
You were listening to a previous episode saying you never listened to it. You were listening to me listening to you.
Because I hadn't seen that one. And I realised that was the time that we found out about Ollie Reed.
There you go.
And I had no idea where he'd come from, you see, because you kept talking about Ollie Reed. Well, but now I know. Because talking about him.
But drink played an important part. What was his favourite tipple, Robin?
Well, it used to be whiskey, but then he gave up whiskey more or less because I didn't have whiskey. So he liked beer a lot and wine. We had wine and things, but I mean, he did drink an awful lot. But he drank much less than people thought he did, because he was one of these people who could go into the pub, buy himself a pint and sit there for an hour or so with the same people, which people didn't recognise, especially the pub at the end of the road where all the actors went. Ronnie Fraser, those sort of people. Loads of drunken people used to go there. Yeah. So yes, he did drink a lot, and he smoked, of course, which was the worst thing, because that's what he died of.
Now, hasn't it? Because people can't smoke inside; they do that sort of thing. So it's a different sort of atmosphere, which is it's a lot cleaner. I mean, we can't do anything at the moment, but obviously,
actually, it is so different, because in the old, and even now, I think I would finish eating, and I think there's something missing,
But it's interesting. I was talking to some other creatives about this fairly recently. I used to say that lots of people would sit around a table, and part of it, all the creatives, they would all be smoking and talking, but at the same time developing the script. Now that sort of side.
I mean, also, the thing was, you buy a pack of cigarettes and you'd throw them around so that you'd share everything. You see, right. You always used to share cigarettes, and then there came a time when they became very expensive, I think, and people used to smoke their own. But in those days, people just used to smoke everybody's.
Go back to the days when you used to buy just one behind the bike sheds. I know it's all changed, but it is a much healthier atmosphere now. I think it's and you're looking back, people always sort of think it was the golden era, and certainly there's a different atmosphere, I think, in those days.
Totally different. I mean, we were all crazy people, really crazy. And I mean, as I said, as I've just told you about 10 minutes ago in this thing I was looking at, we used to go to the Macready's because we all had free passes to the clubs,
yes,
in the shows. You have a meal at the Macready's, and you go to the Butt, you go to Jerry's and see Kenny Clayton and see if he's playing the piano and have a little sing-song, and then everybody would finish up at the Buxton. And the Buxton was open all night, practically, and everybody went there. I mean, that is how I know most of the people in the business. And Bert used to serve behind the bar. And also, he was the one, when it came breakfast time, he would, we'd all go to a Chinese restaurant, and he would order the breakfast.
Right.
And then everybody would get into their cars and race from Trafalgar Square to Hampstead. Race. Drunk.
Oh, no, awful. Like,
nobody ever had an accident.
Well, that's extraordinary. We wouldn't encourage that.
But then there weren't so many people around then.
No, I
And
suppose who was the best driver?
They put bollards up.
Who would get home first?
Oh, Sean Curry, I think.
Oh, is that right?
They put bollards up, and then the bollards were the next day. The bollards were on the floor. You know, I mean, people were wild. They really were crazy. You know, that was sort of like 50s, 60s that time, and then of course terrible things happened. Like was that terrible disease? Everybody, all the gay boys got. Forgotten what it's called.
Yeah, so, well, there was
HIV.
Yeah, I mean,
that was terrifying because people just stopped sleeping with each other then at that point.
Obviously not everybody affected, but it affects a lifestyle, doesn't it? Or it affects the way that people behave in the right sort of way. And you remember those terrifying adverts that they had about icebergs and things like that. And we lived in fear. I mean, rather similar to the age that we live in now, if you like.
It was very similar, yes. But I mean, it was worse in San Francisco. That was the worst place for it because that's really where it sort of started. It's where everybody thought it started. Because, you know, a lot of gay people in San Francisco is the place to go to. And some friends of mine who were there at the time, they said you'd actually, if you saw somebody gay coming along, you'd cross the road. So
it's that whole sort of stigma attached to all sorts of things. And it's on ignorance, isn't it? A lot of the time, when you're looking at these things, and we have this, and it's a common theme, is that firstly, the thing that spreads quicker than anything is fear. And in any war, the first victim is the truth. And so what happens is a lot of people, they start all these rumors, they start all these speculations. Everybody becomes an expert on things they don't really know anything about.
I know.
And
this is
awful.
But I mean, Facebook also produces that. Everybody has their own idea. And that's why I've stopped putting jokes on, because if you say sort of in a jokey way, I'm having trouble with my password or something like that, then you get pages and pages and pages. Everybody has to tell you what to do about it, you know.
Maybe that would be a great idea for a play or a book, something on Facebook.
I have millions of people there. I mean, I've got so many people. I've got too many people. You've got 5,000 people.
I think that's the most you're allowed, and every now and again you fluctuate. So you work your way through the list of people, and I'm sure I know some of them, and it's always rather fun.
I'm trying to get rid of some people, but you know it's not easy.
Oh, well, it is. If you talk to me often enough, I'm sure they'll disappear. Absolutely. They say, "Oh, you know that Andrew won't do." Well, I have nothing to do with you.
Oh no, you've got this thing. You are a lovely person. Everybody says so.
I don't think everybody does, but I think that's good.
Not everybody. Not quite everybody, no. I have to admit, not quite everybody.
It's rather like, this is what I love about it, is that people, in the same way as Robin did beforehand, and George Sanders, another one, where you say, this is the profession, this is what we just do in the day, but we're going to be ourselves. And you can love us or hate us, but at least you have an opinion. And it's the Oscar Wilde thing, isn't it? All about the only thing worse than people talking about you is them not talking about you.
Well, I know that this is why Donna thought you were a friend of Donald Trump. Where have you gone?
I'm here. I'm still here.
This came up suddenly.
No, don't worry. It's all good. Yes, yes. I think I always like.
She got that from me. I don't know how she did, but I mean, when I was trying to persuade people to come on, you know, to talk to you. And I was sort of giving, you know, say wonderful that he wrote this book and he wrote about Donald Trump, you know. And immediately she went, oh no, because she's American, of course.
Well, so, I think the good thing, as you know, what I like to do is always make sure you look at every single side of any argument, because that way you can get to the truth. Sometimes there are elements in anybody's argument that has some help in getting to the truth, and I think it's only by listening to all sides that you can do that. So I always keep an open mind, and when anybody's not in the room, I'll always try and put the other side of an argument, as you know.
I know, and as I say to you, it's terribly irritating. She's actually going, Jessie.
I know, but it's too easy. Because what happens is people surround themselves by yes people, don't they? Yes men, yes women, everything else. Work on that sort of basis. And if you're doing that, it then gets very boring after a while, doesn't it? Because all you're doing is you're reading newspapers, or you're getting your social media, or you're reading, watching channels, and they're only confirming your own prejudices. And as we know, people will work on the basis that there's a little bit of influence in any way in terms of what they say. And so if you're looking for people to confirm your views, you'll find them. If you look for alternative views, then actually you're going to somewhere between that get a different perspective on life.
There will be the truth somewhere. But I mean, you know, I'm sort of obsessed about truth, but I mean, that was the great thing with Robin. I mean, he was incapable of telling a lie. I didn't ask him any awkward questions because I just totally trusted him, you know.
And I think that's, I was going to ask him what the secret was to, as you say, you yourself used the phrase, he was your soulmate. I mean, in terms of the secret of the longevity, because you were there for how many years together, was it? It was over 25 years, wasn't it? Yes.
It would have been longer if he hadn't died.
Yeah, and within that period, as you say, this was an era when people were, I'm putting it bluntly, jumping in and out of bed together, weren't they? They were having all sorts of relationships, but you were...
Right. That was the thing, and that was, you know, and the Beatles and all those great people, you know, everybody did it, you know. It was, I didn't do it very much, but I'm a bit sort of strange about...
When you say, well, you can have a categorical statement, say, I didn't do it, and then you take away with it, I was saying, very much. Which one was it?
Oh, yes. I mean, obviously one had affairs with people, you know, that's right. But I didn't have, you know, not like Hillary, you know, one night stands and things like that. I mean, she was extraordinary. I mean, she said, she'd look around, when the cast came in for the show, she was my assistant. And she would look at the cast each time and wonder which one she could have, you know.
That night.
Immediately. Yeah. And she would do it, you know, and she had this car, I told you, the Lotus Elan, whatever it's called. And,
well, you know, my first car was a Lotus Elite, so I like
right,
the Lotuses.
I think that was what it was, because I remember we talked about it before. But yes, so it was a pulling car, really. But she'd go through the whole of Spotlight and the whole of Buxton, certainly the Buxton, because she used to go to the Buxton all the time. She was always there playing darts.
That's another game that people miss, isn't it? I love the old pubs that play darts, because that's rather fun.
Yeah, they used to play darts a lot.
Which other games did they have?
They always used to wear clothes that were sort of transparent.
So she had her Lotus Elan, the pulling,
and transparent,
throwing darts. Okay.
She was amazing. But it didn't matter. She was advertising what she wanted, and she got what she wanted. So
it's all a choice, and this is we're all about the element of choice from all sides. But it is a different era. But in terms of your longevity, your 25 years together, what do you think were the secrets to that success and that longevity?
Work, really, because we worked together all the time. He went out and bought this huge table so that we could sit at either end of the table. But in fact, we didn't, because, you know, I was the editor, because I edited everything, you know. But I mean, he was wonderful, because I would slog along, you know, getting the script together and the dialogue and everything and trying to make it. Then he'd just come in with something totally magic and crazy, you know, go to the pub and come back and he'd be thinking with his, you know, and then suddenly come in and have this whole thing written out. And he was magic. I mean, you know, he was so funny, so clever.
It's that wonderful collaboration, isn't it, with like the Victorian Songbook and things like that, which you'll do together. And
yes, I did most of that. I did most of that because he you know, I was much more sort of intellectual, really, I suppose. But he did. I think he did the preface, and somebody said, you know, what wonderful energy and things. You know, he had very special energy. But I mean, we worked on it together. But I mean, I actually did the actual hard work of writing and things. But we discussed it first, and then I would write it. So that was a lot of things we did. we talked about everything, and then, you know, we'd go away and write it on our own and then come back and work on it. But I mean, we just worked so hard all the time.
I always love that sort of talking to people and how they collaborate in teams in the different ways. But
Yeah.
your secret was you discuss it all together, then you go away and do all the work. So,
no, not exactly that. No, but I mean, I did all the typing.
Right.
I did everything, yeah. And we had darling Janet, my friend Janet, who I've just realised, because I've always needed somebody to have to spark me off. You know, I'm not very good at just sitting doing stuff on my own. And I remember how I wrote the books. I used to send her a chapter every time I finished it, and then she would tell me about it. And, you know, and she read a whole lot of my poems, which I suddenly found the other day. She read it into a book and illustrated it, you know, with all the poems. And I found a poem, and I have no idea what was the reason behind the poem. It's extraordinary. It's like a whole story in about 5 lines, you know.
Oh yes, I saw your poem this morning. You put
yes, it's a broken heart, and
yes.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I don't know where it came from.
Do you have it there?
Hmm?
Do you have it with you? I think I can probably pull it up.
I don't remember it. Something about you did lots of yes. You gave me answers to questions that I hadn't asked. Yeah. That was something. And I know, I mean, people do that all the time. You know, they tell me that I've asked them a question, and even you do that. Oh golly.
What are you pulling about? I'm pulling up your post. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can find it.
All right.
There we go. Okay, my life is all words and burnt saucepans, you said from 7 years ago.
Oh, that's yes. That's something that happens all the time to me. Yes, because if I get involved in something, I totally forget the potatoes are on the stove. You know.
No, I understand. Okay, well, I found it on your Facebook page. Maybe writing books takes too long. What about it? Are you okay for me to read this?
Yes, go on.
Maybe writing books takes too long.
Right.
Maybe writing books takes too long. What about a short story like this? The life as I knew it has gone, tumbling apart like cherry pie crust. He gave me lies in answer to unasked questions. The words poured over me like gravy on a Sunday roast and congealed into a broken heart.
Yes, isn't it funny? I know. And I don't know where it came from. And everybody was terribly moved by this, you know. So terribly sad.
Well, it does sound very sad. Well, I'm glad it wasn't you who wrote it, because it sounds terrible.
It was me, yes. It was me, definitely.
Oh, you did write it, but it wasn't from experience, or it was all...
I don't know where it came from, darling. I really don't. I think what it was, the gravy and the congealed, I think it was those words, putting those words together made it interesting. And the broken heart was just something you put on anyway, you know. I think it was that. But it was so funny because I think it was written in about, I don't know, 2014 or something like that. It was when she did the book. It must have been round about that time. And I don't know where it came from. And I thought, well, there was somebody. And I kept trying to work out if I'd had anybody, you know, and I didn't.
So, but you'd already by that stage in 2014 when you wrote those words.
Whatever it was, yes.
Yes, but that was after Robin had already passed.
Robin had died, yes, and I didn't. You know, I mean, I just was not.
Well, no, but you can then see it because trust, as you said beforehand, was so important in your relationship. And one of the secrets to the 25 years of success was that trust. You laughed together. You didn't take the profession too seriously because it was a job as opposed to getting all of your life taken over. Yeah. How did you feel when you lost Robin?
I've actually talked about that, I think, haven't I? It was strange.
Absolutely, it peppered a lot of our conversations, but it's...
Because he used to, you know, as I say, he used to smoke. He didn't smoke at home. I mean, you know, I stopped him smoking here. So, but he used to go to the pub and have a smoke, you know. He wasn't like Bert Kwok when he was doing films. In every costume he had, he arranged to have a pocket inside the costume. So that as soon as they said cut, or take or whatever, he would immediately go. He was so obsessed with smoking. He had to smoke all the time. And we come on set and do all that thing with Peter Sellers, you know, and then immediately have another. So that was interesting. I'm sorry, I keep going off the point. I do find it a little bit difficult to talk about.
I know, I realise that, and when anybody goes off the point, that's often the reason, and it's not being this sort of dogged way of asking the question, but sometimes we recognise, obviously, when you lose somebody so close, and you clearly were very, very close, it is heartbreaking. One of the great things about our talks, and one of the great things that people tell me, is that you put in words how they're feeling. Because when people get really close to somebody and hearing somebody else express the way that they felt about it, they actually take some comfort from it. And it is difficult, and it's touching the nerve and so on and so forth. And it's also not just understanding grief and how people cope with grief. And we've all lost people very close to us over the last few months in particular. And I think what happens is by talking about it provides some sort of comfort, but also it's a sort of coping mechanism for some people as well.
I didn't tell you about Maria, his first wife, didn't I? When for the funeral, because we arranged this wonderful funeral. It was wonderfully funny and great. And Barrie Cryer and Johnny Dennis both did long bits about it. And before we went, I said, oh dear, because I have a sort of sniffle thing, you know, which I do all the time. And I said, oh my God, people, I've got a cold, haven't I? And she said, all right, darling, they'll think you're crying. Because she thought that was the best thing to happen at a funeral. You had to cry. Because I'm afraid, I mean, you know, because she's Jewish, I think that was a standard thing for Jewish funerals, for people to cry.
In some cultures, they actually hire wailers, don't they? You have that original thing that's at funerals.
Robin used to enjoy the funerals of Jewish. Well, because what happens is they do the funeral, then they have a whole week of drinking.
Ah, right, okay.
You see, so
wait. You're saying, but it is strange because a lot of times it's a family get-togethers. So I get that. I mean, it's tricky, but it's good to have that sort of attitude. Is that you don't see each other for ages, other than at weddings and funerals. And there aren't that many weddings happening, but there are everybody.
But he used to go for the drinking.
No, he did. So he was all good. There's another funeral.
Everybody drinking. And I remember there was a friend of mine had a bar mitzvah, and we did a show for them, you know, their bar mitzvah, and what was it we had? What was the drink we had? Oh, I can't remember I can't remember the name of it now, but we drank it all. We drank the whole place dry, you know, this stuff. I can't remember what it's called. Southern Comfort.
Southern Comfort. Ah, yes. I used to.
I know. But they were brilliant, the boys, you know, because they did their little show. And they did that thing that the John Cleese and the others did. You know, I'm posh, you know, and I look down.
Yes. Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker, and I look down on him, and he looks up.
Yes, that's right. And the kids did that. The one who was 13 was looking down on the one that was 10, and the one that was 10. It was so sweet.
Well, that works.
So that and Southern Comfort, and I got a picture of Kent Baker and Maggie Beckett, I think, at the bar mitzvah, all dressed up in their funny costumes. And we had a lovely time there. So he was somebody that would gather an army for us if we put on a show, you know.
Right. Which is so that was really his attitude to death, if you like. In particular, it's more about not mourning the loss, but celebrating the life. Is that the best?
Celebrating the life. That's the important thing. Yes.
And is that how you viewed it then, as difficult as it was? Did you sort of look back and just say, we had fantastic 25 years?
I think about the wonderful funeral. I do think about the wonderful funeral. I remember the daffodils, and I still get daffodils as much whenever I can. I mean, I haven't got any at the moment. That's why I want to go to Marks and Spencer's to get some daffodils. Because I got five lots of daffodils, and I've had them all over the place, you know. So yes, Robin was a daffodil person, definitely. And when he died, he'd ordered a yellow cover for something or other. At the divan or something, and that was what happened when we'd got him some oxygen, thing of oxygen, and he was playing with that. And then the doorbell went, and I went downstairs to pick up the parcel, the yellow stuff. And I came back, he was gone. It was extraordinary. It was so easy. But he had been poorly, because it was emphysema. It was the same as Bert. Bert had the same thing. But I stayed with Bert for 10 weeks. I went to he was at Marie Curie, the hospice, and I used to go every other day. His ex-wife used to go in one day, and then I would go the next day. For 10 weeks, he was in there. You're supposed to go. They only put you in Marie Curie when you're about to die. And he was there 10 weeks, he wouldn't die. Why won't they let me die? And they said, and they were not allowed to give him more morphine. He kept saying, well, give me more morphine and then I can die. But they're not allowed to do that. They have to wait until it actually just goes. Frances went quite quickly. Frances went immediately, really, when she went into Marie Curie. But Robin stayed at home. He wouldn't go anywhere. So, I looked after him, sort of looked after him. And I did a degree while I was looking after him. And I worked for a computer company. I was a customer support. When I talked to many people about having trouble with computers, and I knew more about computers than the rest of the world at that time. Of course, they've changed now. So I did that as a job, working on computers, telling people how to mend their computers.
And keeping busy, I guess that's one of the ways that you're focusing on the positive and looking at the funny times and stuff like that, and how and keeping busy, because I think sometimes if you're not doing anything, you get a chance to, well, sometimes it's good to cleanse and just let all the world's problems go away, but other times if you do nothing, then all the negative thoughts can come in, and so filling it with something else is important, isn't it?
Yes, I do get a lot of negative thoughts, but it's just been very difficult this time. Frances went. The people that I spent most of my time talking to have all disappeared. Frances, who is one of my sort of best people, and Elsie, of course. And I think of Elsie every single night because when it's cold, I have an electric blanket. And she always used to say to me about 9 o'clock, have you switched on your electric blanket? And I always hear her voice.
Right.
About that time. So I can switch. I don't have it now.
People live on in our memories. And I think that's one
way. Well, they don't. It's like ghosts, you see. It is like ghosts. Like my mother is here all the time. She's always here. And Toffles, the cat, is always here.
Right.
Toffles was great. He used to be able to turn the knobs of the doors so he could get into places. Right. And of course, the doors just keep opening. It's Toffles.
There you go. And it is those little memories. So how do you think then, finally, that Robin Hunter would like to be remembered?
I think he would have approved of what people said about him. Comic genius, quite like that. This is what everybody said. I think so. That's really what he was. He just wanted to make people happy. We both did. That was what we were for. That was what we were for. Other actors are for doing serious things, making people unhappy. But we were there to make people smile. And that was what we're for. When they say, what are the others for? Johnny said, our duty is to be good to look after people, the others, that's right, but we don't know what the others are for. Do you remember that?
I do.
We knew what everybody was for. Everybody was there to be corrupted, to be smiling and happy. And never to do anything that somebody else was doing. That is the biggest important thing, is never to copy anybody or cheat or take things. People take things from you all the time, and I just don't believe in it. I think you've got to work everything out for yourself. Am I all right? I'm all right with you, aren't I?
Yes, of course. Why not?
Well, I don't know. I just think sometimes people think I'm a bit aggressive or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't think you're aggressive. I think fine. I think it's all very good. It's wonderful. It's a real pleasure catching up as always. And
Yes, it's fantastic.
thank you for sharing those fond memories of Robin. I know it's very close.
Well, there's an awful lot more, but of course, I do go off at a tangent. We were talking about death, and I do go off at a tangent.
But it's all relevant. It's all connected. And I think sometimes people have their own relationships and in their own lives, obviously. And that's what they do. You find those little snippets and you work out and think, oh, yes, hang about. If you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh? People are the same around the world. And that's why I think it's so healthy and good that people hear about their own experiences. Tangents are okay. I like tangents. And it's always a joy going on a tangent with you. But for now, thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye, darling.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for asking me.
It's always really all
inviting me into your life. Yes, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, joined again by the wonderful Aline Waites. If you would like to be on the programme or are touched by any of the issues or have any comments, you can write to me at Andrew Eborn at Octopus TV. And follow, share, do what you normally do. Subscribe on YouTube and other channels. But for me, for now, thank you very much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.